Hello, hello, hello. It's Dr. Torie here on another episode of Be VicTORIEus. Again, make sure you follow us on social media. We're everywhere. Dr. VicTORIEus on Instagram, Dr. VicTORIEus on Facebook, Dr. VicTORIEus on Twitter. I am Be VicTORIEus on Facebook. I am Be VicTORIEus on LinkedIn. I am everywhere, you guys. Make sure you follow us on our YouTube channel. This is where everything is. We are streaming all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on all social media platforms. So please make sure you like and subscribe. We appreciate it. We have for episode 6 a special guest. It is June. It is PTSD Awareness Month. And this special guest, I think you guys will enjoy. She has a story that she would love to share, and we're here to listen. And so I would like to introduce Carrie. Carrie is Support Humankind on Instagram, and she's such an amazing person. Carrie, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Torie.
You're so amazing.
Great to be here.
You're so amazing. We would like to hear from you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Cari Mueller, and as Dr. Torie said, I'm on all platforms at Support Humankind. I'm a 26-year retired Army veteran, a person with 6 aces, which we will get to. And I am in long-term recovery for PTSD, military sexual trauma, and childhood experiences. And upon my retirement, I got into healing work, and now I work with people doing grief recovery work. So
And
thanks for letting me share.
And I thank you. It's an honor for you to be here. It's an honor to meet you. We've communicated, we've talked, and you have shined this light that is so amazing to me. And I asked you to do the podcast because I believe that people need to hear your story. There's a lot of things that have happened in the military, and we've talked briefly about a lot. And I can't apologize for things that I wasn't aware of, but I hate that all of this stuff happened to you. So with this podcast, I just want to have a few discussions, talk to you about some things. And
Sure.
Again, I appreciate you for sharing your story.
Thank
you do know about ACEs, and you have a score of 6.
Yes.
And again, we've had this discussion. A 6 isn't on a level of 1 to 10. What it is just saying that in the ACEs categories, you scored in a little bit more categories than some. And so you've already told us a little bit already of the categories that you fall into based off of your introduction. And again, sorry that you had to experience those things. You're such a wonderful person, but you have done something wonderful about it. And so I think that's why we're here, so people can understand and know it's okay to have ACEs as long as we're doing something about it. And I appreciate your time and everything that you've done thus far. Your ACEs, when did you find out that it was actually ACEs? When did you find out about that?
I know Dr. Nadine Harris did that TEDx talk back in 2015. And I think the first time I saw it was 2017, after I had just begun doing my trauma work. I started working on my military trauma. And then it was like, whoop, pump the brakes. Stuff happened before that. And once I saw her TEDx talk and, I started investigating more, I was like, this is important information.
It is.
For everyone to know.
And let me shout her out, and I do it every time. Dr. Nadine Burke Harris is such a force. I'm inspired. I'm motivated. I would not be here if it wasn't for her. So she's always been a role model for me. So I get it. That one TED Talk actually changed a lot of lives. So yeah, that's why we're here. And she has been doing so much work in California as the general, but she retired. So, somebody got to fill those shoes. I'm not saying it's me. I'm just saying we cannot stop this discussion about adverse childhood experiences. So that's why we're here. So 2017. So kind of still fresh a little bit, but you have done something about it. So briefly talk about some of the things that you've done since you found out about your ACEs.
I think the question is, what haven't I done?
Right.
I am a knowledge sponge. So once I learned about all these things, childhood things, military things, and how they all clash together and become compounded, I started going after it. I've done equine therapy. I've done body work. I've done somatic experiencing, processing trauma in the body, talk therapy, and I'm doing grief recovery work. Like, if it's out there, I've probably tried about at least 80 to 85% of it.
Really? Has it helped?
Yes.
Okay.
It has all been helpful.
Okay, tell us a little bit more. So give us an example. Tell us a little bit more.
So, for example, equine therapy. So it's working with horses. It's relationship work with horses. And what that did for me is, like, I didn't trust anyone, because I was never safe. I wasn't safe at home sharing feelings. And I certainly wasn't allowed to have feelings in the military. They didn't give them to you. You didn't have it. So once I got out, I had to find a way to start building trust in relationships. And I started it with horses, right? Because they just read your energy, and they're with you in the space that you're in, and you can walk up to them and whisper any secrets that you want. No reactions, no judgment, no fixing. And the thing about horses, because they read your energy, it helped me realize, like, how I showed up, because I lived in fight or flight.
Right.
So when I got to horses and I could see how they were responding to my energy, it helped me to notice, okay, I'm really activated right now. Take deep breaths, regulate my emotions, so then I could be present with them. Because I haven't been able to do that. It has to be some sort of emotional regulation to be present with what is.
Interesting.
And so,
it helped.
Absolutely.
Well, that's interesting. So I'm actually going to look into that. I let people know all the time that you don't have to necessarily sit on a couch to receive therapy. Whatever your therapy of choice is, whether it's art, singing, dancing. We had a young man, episode 4, he is a dance hall king, and that's his therapy. Dogs are emotional support. And to hear that you establish trust, I'm actually going to look it up. I think that's an amazing thing, because I've seen it before. I just didn't know that it had a name. So here's something educational for us, you guys, because a lot of people have issues with trust.
And I just wanted to follow up that was supported by a therapist. So there was a therapist and an equine specialist. So there were people to help you navigate, or me navigate, emotions and feelings. And that's just one of the things, right, that I've done. And I think it's helpful to say the things that people don't know about, because there's so many resources out here.
That's why you're here. That's the reason why we've created this podcast, because we have a story, and with us having a story, there are ways that we can combat our adverse childhood experiences. There has to be, because in order to survive and live, this is what we have to do. So we had a conversation earlier, and you did your live. Congratulations, you do lives all the time. Tell us a little bit about that.
So as you mentioned, today's the first day of PTSD Awareness Month. And I've been doing also a lot of grief recovery work, and because and then I went and got certified in it so I can help other people. And before I could get up to do that post this morning, something from my past showed up in a randomness in Facebook, and it was a picture of my perpetrator. And that really brought up a lot of stuff for me from the past straight into the present moment.
So you were triggered.
Yes.
How do you feel about that, if you don't mind sharing?
I'm really glad you asked me that, because I did get to talk to my therapist today.
Okay.
And what I was surprised to find out is that it was a whole mixed bag of emotions. Because before I understood that this person was a perpetrator, and was preying on me, I cared about them. I kind of had them on a pedestal. I was a young soldier in the Army, and I thought that he was mentoring me. So all of these feelings came up, like, I care about this person, and wow, they did this stuff to me. And it's, now I'm in a different space to hold a space for all of these feelings, but it was surprising that all of them came up and I was able to be present.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's challenging sometimes to understand that you actually cared about somebody that harmed you.
Yeah. And there's no relationship, there's no discussion, nothing with this person, correct?
No. And I swear to God, I hoped and prayed that I would never see them again. And I thought there would be no way that would happen.
Yeah.
And so when that randomly popped up in a military group on Facebook that I was in, it rocked me.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Being clearly transparent.
And I love it, because this is what people have to see and know and understand, that we've created this podcast, but we've also created a safe space for you to share your story, because there are other people like you out there. So somebody else is going to identify, they're going to understand that ACEs is out there, ACEs are real, and the things that have happened in the military are not necessarily supposed to happen at all. So I've told you before, and I'm going to continue to tell you, my heart goes out for you, because not only did you fight for our country, this happened to you in the process. So it's troubling to hear, especially. I love the fact that you have actually done something about it, though. There are people out there that haven't. So how are you feeling now?
Sad. I'm still in shock, really. And I have compassion for that 20-year-old me.
And so what's interesting is, you said the 20-year-old you. I was just having a discussion with someone, letting them know that 18 to 24 age is where ACEs can still happen. We don't really have an age relation, but that 18 to 24, how many people have been in college and things have happened? How many people have been first year in the military or second or third year in the military and things happen? And so that was one of the major discussions that I was having with someone this week, is that these are the people that we need to talk to and work with and identify with now, because we can also address that issue when it happens. You don't have to be a kid. When you're 18 to 20, that's that prime where things also happen too. So I thank you for actually opening up on this and sharing this, because again, your story is real. I love your smile though. And the fact that you're sharing your story, I can guarantee you there's somebody on here that can relate. And I hate that they have to relate in that way, but at least they know that they're not alone. So again, thank you so much. So what's interesting, you guys, I usually don't do this much talking. And you've seen my podcast before. I really don't. But your situation is different. And usually it does happen when it's younger. And it does happen when people, with household and things of that nature. So I have to guide you based off of our discussions and the things that we've talked about previously. So just so you know, that's really what ACEs are. But this is something that we've always talked about, which is the reason why I wanted to hurry up and interview you, because 20 is a prime time. Things can still happen. And here it is, years later, you're still affected by something that happened to you a long time ago. So my heart again goes out to you. Okay. So the ACEs categories, if you notice, there's not anything military related on those ACEs categories. So if you had an opportunity, what would you add to the ACEs categories?
This might sound a little strange, but I would add something along the lines of, if people have had invasive surgeries or dental work in that age frame, right, between 0 and 17, because what happens? Kids are scared. They're separated from their parents. Anytime our bodies are invaded by by some cutting or any kind of, that's trauma to the body. And then coming out of anesthesia. So those are things that we don't talk about. And that's trauma that gets stuck in the body. And imagine that at a young age, and then being separated from your parents. And then if it's extended illness, and or if your parents have something and then they have an extended illness and it causes separation, like those are a lot of things that people don't talk about, because I notice, I also work with people in all forms of recovery. And a lot of the conversations behind that is when you try to address like the core issues behind the why. The first thing they'll say is, I didn't have a bad childhood. I wasn't abused, or I didn't have this. Not because we don't have the awareness of, it's more than just the confining questions of the ACEs. It's all of these other things here, there, and then they get compounded. But because it doesn't look bad like people think, we're out here doing things based on stuff that we don't understand.
Exactly. We call that pearls, and we're actually doing something about that, because the pearls are the extra things that need to be added that are not on that ACEs initial study. So again, your ACEs came from being in the military, nothing in your childhood. If you were to do the,
I'm glad you asked that question, because it's really funny that you said that, because if you would have asked me this before I started doing trauma work, my story would actually start when I went into the military, because I totally negated my childhood. And until I learned about ACEs, my actual score is from my childhood. And then all the military stuff came on top of it.
Wow. Okay, so let me go back, because I just learned that now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thanks for asking. Yeah.
Wow. So which ACEs category do you relate to the most, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So I looked at that, and I think physical and emotional neglect, and also family member dealing with mental illness.
Interesting. Which one do you want to talk about first?
They kind of go hand in hand. So I can kind of just.
So
how would you like me to do it?
You got your three categories. The family illness, that is the household dysfunction. Remember, you have physical and emotional abuse. That's one category. Physical and emotional neglect is a second category. So again, this is the reason why your ACEs score is what it is, because you are in several categories. So that's a lot. Weren't aware of this, Carrie. You didn't tell me all of this, but nonetheless,
we're here for it, right?
Yes. Was it mother or father, if you're comfortable with sharing?
Yeah, sure. So my mother had undiagnosed mental wellness issues. It was more of a, hey, that's just her, and everybody just kind of moved around it. But it affected us, and I can only speak for me. It affected me in a way that she wasn't able to be present for me. She had to go outside of the home to try to get her emotional needs met, and wasn't aware of how it affected me. And it was, okay, so then we didn't have clean clothes. We weren't eating dinner. Where is mom? When is she coming home? And then that would trigger dad. Asking those questions would activate his story. And then it would be, you have no feelings. I'm not doing anything about your needs not getting met.
Is your motivation to go to the military?
Yeah, I wasn't ready to go to college. It wasn't interesting to me at that moment. I wanted to get money for college. So when I was ready, I would go. And also I needed to run. I needed to run because I didn't know what I needed.
Fight or flight. I want people to understand that ACEs are so real, and people don't understand. We have to identify and know exactly what it is, because we can help ourselves so much knowing how much of an effect it had on us in our childhood, if that makes any sense.
In doing grief work, we work on losses. And what I realized for myself, and I think it happens for a lot of people. So I graduated high school.
Good.
4 days later, I shipped off to the military on Father's Day. So in that 4-day period, I graduated high school, big transition. I left my childhood home. I left my family. I left my friends, and I went flying wide open into the unknown zone of the military. So I took all my childhood stuff in 4 days, didn't process anything, and then blasted off into a new life that there was no time to process any of that. So there was a whole bunch of things that I could have grieved. And because we don't understand that, and we rush off to college or, vacation or to the military, that there's no time to slow that stuff down. And so then we just changing relationships, we just take all that with us into the next part of our lives.
So you're telling me you trauma bonded with the military?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I tell people, I'm like, it was like being in one long relationship with a narcissist.
How long were you in the military?
26 years. Trauma bonded. Thank you for understanding that. You're the first person that got that.
Thank you so much for serving our country under your circumstances. Thank you so much. Tell us more about your grief counseling, because that's what I'm excited about, the fact that you are actually changing lives daily by doing this work. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Sure. So what I realized, I was doing all of those things that I mentioned, and there was no conversations about grief. And me being the knowledge sponge and everything that I am, I was like, we don't ever talk about grief. So I brought it up to my PTSD therapist, who is amazing. But then he said to me, I think I'm going to have to ask somebody else about that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. No digs. He's amazing, but it was just interesting. He's like, we don't really get a lot about that. We don't get a lot of, education around grief work in our training. Mm-hmm. And then I have, and I have an amazing chaplain as well. And chaplains do chaplain-y things, right? But they don't necessarily have the tools to walk people through a grieving process. So I bought this book. Actually, I got it here. The Grief Recovery Handbook. And guess what I did? I threw it on the shelf with all my other resources.
Yeah,
first, yeah. Right at first. So it was in my list of things to review and research. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, poof, it was at the top of my list. So I picked up the book, I went online, I did the research, and I found out, guess what? The last little bit of my military education money would pay for me to get the certification and the advanced certification. And I went all in. And we did intensive work. We did the work first. And we walked through the grief recovery method. And I was really grateful for that, because that was a huge piece of what was missing from my trauma recovery. It took me through steps that were intentional in a slow process, where I could bring up everything and have support around that while I was doing it. And we link up with partners or small groups, and then we share that out loud. Extremely powerful experience. And it held me accountable, because, when you get into some of this work, it'd be easy to be like, danger, Will Robinson, like this is not, like whoop, 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 and
Right.
so it held me, it kept me grounded to know that I had people that were supporting me and also that I was supporting, because that piece is also important to me, and it kept me in the process. And even when I didn't think I was going to have feelings around it, I did. And once I got on the other side of it, I was so grateful, because I found out that I was holding on to this stuff for no reason. Because sometimes it feels holding on to the familiar feels easier to do than letting it go and opening myself up to new experiences and healthier connections and all those things, and finding joy.
And you have found joy.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I love myself. I love myself when no one
It's the
could.
smile for me. Let's be clear. It's the smile, because going through your testimony and the fact that you're here and you're alive and you have your grief counseling that I love so much, by the way. I think you're so amazing. There's so many things that happen in the military. People don't know about PTSD. People don't know about grief recovery, but here you are. And you're here to share your testimony, and you're here to help others. And I thank you so much for being a hero, because I'm telling you, once people hear your story, they're going to relate, and they're going to look for you to be that person to help them through that situation. So I thank you so much for getting the counseling and the things that you need to help people. We all have ACEs, and the fact that we understand and we can identify with it and we're doing something about it, that's what makes me feel better. So it's a pleasure and honor to meet you. It really is.
Thank you, Dr.
One last question.
Sure.
How important is the conversation of ACEs? And how
It's
can
everything. Yeah, it's everything. I did a lot of research when I was doing my degree in human services, and a lot of papers that I wrote were on people that were in prison, and specifically African-American males, and the importance and how they were affected when they started getting educated on ACEs. It's so important to everyone, but for people to finally understand, like, they have stuff, things happen to them, and it's not them. They're not bad. They didn't do anything wrong. Stuff happened.
Yes.
And it's so important for people to get that so they can find ways to get help around that. It's everything. And educating everyone,
Yes,
is the groundwork for this.
and I thank you. I thank you for reaching out to me. I thank you for sharing your story. You've been such a light to me, and I will share with the world. Yes, I'm going to be working with Carrie because I think she's so amazing. Supporting humankind is everything. And I thank you for taking time out of your schedule again to help us understand exactly what ACEs are, to share your story, and basically just shine a light on things that we may not have known about. So I thank you so much. Where can we find you on social media?
So I'm on Facebook at Support Humankind, and I'm also on Instagram at Support Humankind. Those are the two platforms that I do most of my work. I'm also at Support Humankind on YouTube. So when I do my lives, I try to transition them over to YouTube as well.
So you're on YouTube as Support Humankind?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. I will subscribe because I had no clue until you just said this now. So I, again, thank you so much. You will see us working together, you guys. I know you're so amazing to me, and I said that from the beginning. I just, again, take time out of your schedule to help somebody by sharing your story. I appreciate it. So thank you, guys. so much for tuning in on another episode of Be Victorious with Dr. Torie Williams. I thank my special guest again. Support, I call her Miss Carrie because I love her to death. Support Humankind is who she is because that's who she is, and she's touched my heart so much. Just be looking for stuff for us because we got joint ventures coming up, and I'm so excited about it. Make sure you follow both of us. Let's be clear. Follow us on social media. She Support Humankind. I'm Dr. Victorious. I am everywhere, guys. You know this already. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, name it. I'm out there. Thank you again so much for your time.